friends.
This slide makes me a little chilly.
We are scaling the mountain. We're going to have clear visibility.
A gorgeous mountain.
We are the Sherpas.
Great.
The Sherpas shepherding. Oh, great to see everybody. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Enjoy the music, get a sip of water, have a sip of coffee. Great to see everybody. I see familiar names. I see new names in our participants panel, so that's exciting. We have a lot to share today, and we're going to be able to answer everybody's questions. I'm looking forward to it. Lots to cover, and it's such an exciting time for everybody who got selected. It's like a life-changing. It's really life-changing.
It'll be interesting to see the numbers when USCIS releases them.
Oh.
How many people?
I feel like it normally takes several weeks or maybe like a month before they do it. But would you say we had a 30% selection rate and we have a high number of master's people?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. So maybe there was a 25% overall selection rate. So then maybe probably 320 to 400,000 people this year's lottery, which is a lot less than last year with everybody duplicated. And it's kind of what they ended up with after they routed out the duplicate last year. But I'll go ahead and share my screen and let's get started. So here we are. Great to be here. This is selected in the H-1B lottery. What's next? And Alex, can you read our disclaimers?
Yes, I can. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our presentation today. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. And the first is that this webinar is being recorded and the recording link will be available to you following this webinar. This presentation is an educational service by Alcorn Immigration Law, and the information discussed should not be construed as legal advice. Yes, please consult a knowledgeable professional with assistance for your particular issue. And lastly, if you have any questions, you may submit them using Zoom's Q&A function below, and please do so anonymously as these will be shared and answered publicly. And it is now my pleasure to introduce you to our founder and CEO, Sophie Alcorn, and our Chief Legal Officer of Excellence, Lynda Hagerty.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. Hi, Lynda. Thank you for being here today. I just want to say a word about legal advice. Apparently, ethics lawyers don't even know how to define it. But the bottom line is, if you want specific direction about your life with a lawyer telling you what to do and your chances, that should be a confidential conversation, and we'd love to chat with you. And so if we can't answer your questions educationally and publicly today, we have lots of options for you to meet with us, and there's that handy QR code in each slide which can direct you towards some of those scheduling links and such. Hi everybody, my name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law and the host of the Sophie Alcorn podcast, where we've recently been looking at space law, among all things, and how humans will be able to travel to space and what immigration will look like when we go to outer space. So those are some of the things I like chatting about in my spare time. There's lots of episodes about startup founders and people's origin stories and business advice, spirituality, inspiration. So do check it out. I'm also the author of Ask Sophie, the Founder's Guide to Visas and Green Cards, bestselling book, now available on Audible because I recorded an audiobook and that is now available. So if you want to listen to my voice more, you can. And I started this law firm because I'm a mom, Lynda's a mom, we're going to meet her in a second, but we believe that every human should have the right to self-actualize, and we want to help remove obstacles that might stand in the way, and immigration and the tools of immigration law are one of those frameworks that we can utilize to create freedom and opportunities. So that's what led me to start Alcorn Immigration Law. And I'm so thrilled to be joined by the amazing Lynda Hagerty, brilliant immigration attorney, so experienced, so knowledgeable, so creative, so detail-oriented, cares so much about our clients and our team. So thank you so much, Lynda, for being a part of the Alcorn firm and for being here today with me on this webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words, Sophie. That means a lot. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and I've been practicing business immigration law. I just did the math, 22 years. And that's as an attorney. So I did this as a paralegal. So this has just like been my focus and my love. And it's just something that consumes me, and I really enjoy it. And I love working with our clients. I love finding solutions to their complex problems. And, we work with small companies, startups, large companies. So all of our cases have different twists, which I think is really cool. I'm also a mom. So that's, I've got a busy life on the other side, but I really enjoy what I do. And I really love working here at Alcorn.
Thank you, Lynda. Thank you so much. And we have an incredible team. We're a remote law firm. I'm based in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley. Our team, Lynda's in Massachusetts. We have folks in Texas and North Carolina. So we serve our global clients primarily via Zoom and email. And we are available to support you wherever you are in the world. And wherever your intended work site is in the United States, we can help you. We have a team of really excellent, caring, brilliant professionals who personally can relate to our clients' journeys and really care about helping everybody have, well, not just win, but have a good non-traumatic experience along the way, which I think is a high bar for what immigration can be in the world. So we're really thrilled to provide that level of service to our clients. Okay, so are you in the right place? This is a webinar for lots of different types of people. It's for anybody who is involved in somebody who just got selected in the H-1B lottery. So it could be for you as the founder of a new startup, or you could be the CEO of a company and you're the one handling the immigration. Sorry, you still got to do that, but we'll help make it as easy as possible for you. Maybe you're working in human resources or people ops, or maybe you're head of portfolio at a VC and you're advising all of the portfolio companies, or head of platform advising all of the portfolio companies on how they need to do immigration and H-1Bs for their startups. You might have just been selected, and congratulations. We work with a lot of folks, whether you're an engineer or a professional or some other type of business person. Maybe you're an intern, maybe you're recently graduated from a US college or university on your F1. You might be outside of the United States. So we help people in lots of different situations. So if you got selected and you want to know what's next, that is what we're going to cover today. And if you have any remaining questions about what to do for people who were not selected, join us again in 24 hours for our sister webinar, What to Do If You Were Not Selected in the H-1B Lottery. And that's going to be a real interesting one. We do both of these annually, and tomorrow, also annually, Danielle Goldman from Open Avenues Foundation, which is a CAP-exempt H-1B nonprofit sponsor, will be joining us live to share more details on that program for anybody who was not selected and is at the running out of options. So if you're working with a team, both might be valuable for you. And if you have any friends who weren't selected, you can send them to tomorrow's webinar. All right, so let's just start with our basics, and then we're going to go into the whole H-1B thing. What it means to be selected, what's the timeline, what's the process, how do you navigate it? If you want to work with us, how do we work? We'll be sharing all of those details and more. So Lynda, to get us started and make sure everybody has the right foundational knowledge, can you just walk us through where an H-1B fits into this immigration world?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to. I mean, I kind of think of these as different buckets. And when we look at the visa bucket, that's where an H-1B temporary work visa would fall. But then there's other things. You hear the term non-immigrant visa, NIV. Those both relate to H-1B because H-1B is a temporary non-immigrant status, which allows you to work for one employer for a specific duration of time. And then,
Okay. Go ahead, keep going.
no, I'm kind of following here. So, you know, when we look at it, you see people that come in as a visitor under ESTA. So that's a non-immigrant admission, but you don't have a visa stamp. So that's what's different.
Yeah.
You know,
And an
and
H-1B, you could get a literal visa in your passport, or you could get H-1B status, and that could be through a change of status. So there's lots of flavors of how you actually end up in it, which we'll also be talking about more. And it's not a green card, but people really love it because if you get an H-1B, it makes it a lot easier to get a green card next. And a green card is permanent residence, it's a lifetime status. Your spouse can definitely work if you guys get green cards together. So we'll be talking more about all of that. All right, so, okay, if somebody just found out they're selected, what are the critical deadlines that they need to be mindful of so nobody drops the ball and everything gets done on time?
yeah, no, I mean, first of all, congratulations. I mean, we were chatting a little bit, you know, our selection rate was around 30%, maybe slightly higher. So if you were selected, that's wonderful. What's next? I mean, we've got to file the petition. So from April 1, USCIS sets a 90-day filing deadline. So the filing deadline is it has to be in USCIS's hands by June 30th. So that's something you really have to work towards.
Yeah.
The other thing to be mindful of is when you file the petition, you have to be able to show you were qualified. So if you applied for the H-1B lottery under the U.S. Masters category and you were selected and you still haven't received your degree, you know, you have to make sure that degree is conferred or you have evidence that it was conferred before that filing deadline.
Yeah. And so then there's this cap gap variation, and that might mean that people individually in specific cases have an earlier deadline. Not to USCIS doesn't care. They'll still select it, or they'll still give you a chance to have an approval if you filed by June 30th, but there might be other necessitating factors for somebody's life, work authorization, where they might need to file sooner. And that's, I think, mostly boils down to cap gap. So can you explain what cap gap is, please?
Sure. Yeah, so for cap gap, this is a provision for F1 students. So when a student graduates from a US college or university, they receive this 1 year of work authorization called OPT, and they'll get a work authorization card. And then sometimes they qualify for an additional 2 years of what we call a STEM extension. But that expiration date on their work authorization card is kind of what comes into play. Because what cap gap does is it tries to bridge a gap. So if that work authorization card was valid on April 1, but it expires before the H-1B can start on October 1, cap gap will essentially extend that work card until September 30th to kind of fill in any gaps in work authorization.
Yeah. And so the critical thing here for the deadlines, which may differ, is when does the person's very last possible year of regular OPT or STEM OPT end? So if somebody got an engineering master's from Berkeley and their last day of STEM OPT ever is going to be May 15th, we got to file that H-1B by May 15th. And then they can keep working merrily along through September, assuming the H-1B gets approved, and then their H-1B status gets activated in October. If somebody was a liberal arts major and studied philosophy or English, or they're a lawyer, they don't get STEM OPT. So the last date that cap gap ties to is whenever their 1 year of regular OPT will end, because they're not eligible for STEM OPT. So if somebody's got a STEM degree, they're in regular OPT, and they could qualify for STEM OPT, they just need to go about applying for STEM OPT as normal until their H-1B takes effect. A bunch of variations.
Yeah.
So 95% of our clients are going to be working with that June 30th deadline, and it makes no difference if they do it sooner. But for like a select handful of people, filing earlier could be critical. And so okay, let's also look at a variation. So that, let's say somebody just graduated, now we have schools on the semester system and schools on the quarter system. So what if somebody previously got a bachelor's degree, they're about to get their very first advanced degree, which is a master's, and they're going to graduate in May or June of this year with their master's degree, and we check the box for, yes, this person has a master's degree in the lottery. What do they need to be mindful of in terms of when they can file?
Yeah, so because they filed under the US Masters cap, we have to make sure that we can show that they've earned the qualifying degree at the time we submit the petition to USCIS. So even if they don't have the diploma, we could get an official transcript, a letter from the registrar, we could be creative, but we have to be able to show they were qualified and they met that requirement at the time we file.
Yeah, not at the time of the lottery. So
Exactly.
we just have to make sure we get those academic documents before we file. And so for a school like Stanford, where graduation is around June 21st, that gives us like 9 days to get the final stuff in order, but we can try to be proactive and help with that. Cool. Oh, and with all of this, well, I guess we can say that on this slide, we are accepting new clients. We did help our client companies starting last November get ready to put people in the lottery so that it was a very sane, orderly, clear thought out process. We put tons of effort into this over the last 6 months to ensure that our clients would have a good experience between the H-1B filing fees changing with USCIS and the government launching a new software system that nobody knew how it was going to work. Again, I think our clients had an amazing experience. Lynda, you did a great job with our team. As I recall, all of the registrations were done like within the first week or so, and we had extra time to accept new clients who were in a rush at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Santa's workshop, I feel like. Everyone's, tinkering behind the scenes, playing their part. So I think it's like just making sure everybody's doing their job on the assembly line. So we did have a good experience. We did have the technology challenges, but we got through it. And next year, we're going to know the system better and it's going to be even faster.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, from our client perspective, they don't know what we did behind the scenes. To them, I think they all had a great experience. So if you're on this webinar because you DIY'd it and you hated that experience and you just want to hire us next year to do it for you, we'll be happy to help you. And also, if you DIY'd it and your people got selected and now you're like, okay, we need a lawyer to get through the rest of this, we are happy to help you. So here's how sausage is made. Nobody actually cares, but we do a lot of work behind the scenes to help our clients get an approval. There's all sorts of internal phases. There's Department of Labor forms, there's posting, there's this whole back and forth sub process. If it's a brand new startup, we have to get you pre-authorized to go through that to prove you're a legit company. We do all of the forms, all of the legal arguments, any sort of support letters that are necessary. So from our client's perspective, what they go through when they work with us from this point forward is simply, here's our selection notice. We give you our checklist. Okay, great. Here's the company information, the job role information, the candidate information. And then we're going to specifically tell you, please post this document, please sign this document, please review this document and make sure it's correct. And then we take care of everything else. So we're ensuring that a correct package is going to USCIS for approval this summer or earlier. And then if somebody needs a visa stamp to travel internationally, we're also able to help with that as well. So try to make it as easy as possible for our clients.
Yeah, and I think what I like that we are also really proactive. So even though, a lot of these folks that we collected information from, maybe they weren't selected, but anyone that was selected, we have those clients we're working with most of the documents right now. So we can quickly pivot to the document preparation. We're not going to be chasing you down. We may need a few additional documents, but we've done a lot of that work. So this process can be streamlined to submission.
And if this is somebody's very first H-1B that they've ever been involved in, and they're on the company side and they're like, oh my God, what do I have to do? How much work is this going to involve? How many hours of their effort do you think is likely going to be needed in this process?
I mean, it might be like an hour and a half to 2 hours, but we do hand holding.
Yeah.
Steps.
And the second and third H-1Bs are going to be easier for you because we have a lot of your company information. So try to make it as easy as possible. Okay, and so then you're gonna have a lot of decisions to make along the way of what's next. And I see the questions coming in the Q&A, so that's fantastic. Some of these things are related to slides we already have in this deck. So I'm gonna wait for the existing questions to answer them at the end. We're gonna hold on those, but if you do have questions, you're welcome to put them in there. So that being said, one of the first decisions people are going to have to make is how much money they want to give to USCIS and how fast they want their decision. So what is premium processing? How much does it cost now? How long does it actually take?
So premium processing is essentially like faster track processing. You pay an additional filing fee to USCIS of $2,805, and that ensures that your case is adjudicated in 15 calendar days.
Mhm. And sometimes, well, most of our clients in tech and Silicon Valley, the companies are happy to pay this for their employee to get a decision and have peace of mind and just get it done. But in the cases where the company isn't offering the budget for this, this is one of the rare things that the employee can pay for personally in an H-1B. Any updates from USCIS? I mean, we've had the new filing fees roll out on Monday. The H-1B lottery was last week, so they're swamped. But any indication of whether the transition from 15 calendar days to 15 business days for premium processing has actually taken effect as of the 1st? I mean, we were waiting to see if the lawsuit would have a temporary restraining order last week to slow it down. I haven't seen anything either way. I think this is in effect that it could take up to 3 weeks in real life now to get an H-1B decision. But that was one of the things they're trying to do to increase their capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this was actually bundled in the proposed H-1B regulations. So remember they had the regulations and they split off the registration to make that faster.
Yeah.
And we still have these. So my understanding is that was kind of bundled in with that rather than the filing fees.
Oh,
So we haven't seen a switch yet.
okay,
But
great.
I'm gonna just confirm that because
Crossed. Okay. But
Yeah.
in general, it would take 2 to 3 weeks. Now, does anybody need premium? Okay, so peace of mind is great, but is there any legal reason why anybody would want premium processing for an H-1B in the lottery? I mean, the start date isn't until October 1st.
I mean, I think people that are potentially cap gap and they're worried and they want to make sure they have that approval notice in hand, that might be a situation. And then the limited exception of people who are going to travel, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have to have that approval in hand before you depart, but you've got to come back in before October 1.
And if you don't do premium processing now, but then your case still isn't adjudicated in September, you could always add it in at the last minute, but you could just do it now and have the clarity. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they tend to prioritize H-1B cap. Every year things are, so sometimes we get these cases adjudicated in a month where normal
Yeah.
H's could take 6 months or 4 months. So it's hard to say.
Okay. Let's talk about another choice that employers and beneficiaries have to make at the beginning of an H-1B filing. What is a change of status and who is eligible and what is consular processing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we take a deeper dive in on that in our slide, so we could look at that, or I could just kind of go through.
You know, I don't see the slide looking ahead, so, oh no, we do. We do. Okay, great. We're going to be talking about that. That is another decision you got to make at the beginning and ... more soon / later. Insert here. Okay. Oh, I did way too much on the last slide. That's okay. We're always improving these slides. But this answers Mikhail's question in the chat window. How long do you think that regular processing will actually take now?
No, I wish I had a crystal ball, but I'm just
Yeah.
going to say based on prior years, it's often like 1 to 3 months. So in the
Okay.
beginning, we seem to get those quickly, and then as we file closer to the deadline, I feel like the processing times increase and it takes longer to adjudicate.
Okay, great. Okay, and then for somebody who's also new to this whole immigration thing, they might not have heard the acronym RFE. Can you tell us what that stands for and what that is?
Sure. So that is a USCIS issued request for evidence. It's essentially when the government says, we received your application or petition, but we need more evidence to adjudicate it. It's essentially like a challenge. It could be something minor, it could be, something more substantial, but it's essentially a pushback from USCIS.
Yeah, and that could slow down processing. That's the
Mhm.
bottom line. How many days do they typically give us to respond to an H-1B RFE if we've used premium processing and if we are not using premium processing?
So my understanding is it's essentially the same. It's about 90 days. It might be 89, like a strange number like that. I don't know where that came from. But we never want to be applying close to that deadline. So, deadlines are just like something in the future, but we always want to hit that mark well before that, not get too tight, even with that June 30th deadline.
This is one of the things that makes Lynda amazing. She's like, we have 4 weeks. That's okay. Get it done in 2. So that's great. Yeah, and I feel like sometimes with premium processing, I've maybe seen 60 days, but it sort of varies based on the officer. So, but I think your point is the correct answer. It's like, let's just get this approved as soon as we can.
Mhm.
So yeah, but nobody can start earlier than October 1st. So that is the other main thing. And if you get a visa because you're going to consular process it, the earliest you can come in is 10 days before to get situated. Okay, so now we come to the promised land of the slides describing the difference between a change of status and consular processing. So can you please walk us through these concepts?
Sure. So if you think about a change of status, it's really something that happens while you're in the US, and the government will essentially change your non-immigrant status, let's say from F1 student to H-1B worker, by issuing a petition with an I-94 admission card attached to the lower right. So it's an effective change of status, although, as we said in the last slide, it wouldn't take effect until October 1, but they can do that for a future filing. So that's what would result. And that doesn't mean you have to get a visa stamp. I mean, I think there's a lot of confusion between that sticker in your passport that you need. That's really for travel. And then you always need a valid I-94 card when you're in the US. So the change of status, when you get that approval notice, that I-94 will show that their status has been extended. It'll take the number from your old or your last I-94 admission card, and it will use that same number and extend it.
Yeah. Great, right, because a visa in your passport is a thing that you can show at the airport, so the airline will let you on the airplane and not worry that they're going to have to send you back for free. And then you show it at the airport and it's like, hey, we think this person already qualifies for an H-1B admission into H-1B status. And then Customs and Border Protection is like, boom, you're in H-1B. And then what you have in the US is your status. So there's a lot of people here whose visas expired or they're Canadian and they don't have visas. They still have valid status. And so when you switch from one valid status to another valid status in the US, that's a change of status. So you got to be here. So if you're outside of the US, you're not going to qualify for this. Don't worry about it. Unless maybe you have a B1, B2 visitor visa already. We could look at some weird stuff for you if you need to get here sooner. Okay, so you got to be in the US. So let's talk about this F1 travel exception. So let's say we've got like a grad student and they're on OPT or STEM OPT and somebody's getting married and they're gonna be like in the wedding party and they're hoping to go to Italy this summer for a few weeks. Can they go to the wedding?
I feel like this scenario is so common, and it's usually Italy where the wedding is. So I'm like,
okay. Probably people who get married in other places, our clients just don't feel like spending the effort to go there. So we get a clouded sample because it's just the people who want to go to Italy who bothered to talk to us about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I probably could search Italy in my email and it would come up 50 times. But So yeah, I mean, there is an exception, but there's a lot of things at play. You have to make sure that if you filed a change of status, that you got the change of status approval notice. So you've got that approval notice in your hand. It has an effective date of October 1. So an F1 student, if they already have an F visa stamp in their passport, they can actually depart the US once the H-1B is approved and re-enter, but they have to come back in before October 1. Because then what happens is their status will change while they're in the US to H-1B on October 1.
Yeah. And this would not be the time to go get a new F1 visa stamped in your passport abroad if you don't have one yet. That might be denied because they're like, you want to work? No. Like, I gotta start over with an H-1B visa. Okay, so very limited.
Mhm.
Please, if you're in the US, you think there's any possibility of international travel, or if you're in HR, and please talk to your candidates. This is something we would really love to know as we open your file so that we can make the best strategy for you. And it's individual, it's weird. And then of course there's like random things, like somebody was planning on staying here, they don't have a valid F1 visa, and they have some emergency and they need to go back home for a few months, right? So we can adjust, but we just want to make sure that anything that's a known quantity, we can make a peaceful plan for it from the start.
Right.
Okay, and so not everybody needs a visa, right? Can you explain the last bullet point?
Yeah, so Canadian citizens are actually exempt from the visa stamp requirements. So if you're a Canadian citizen, things are just different. And I wouldn't even probably file it as a change of status if you knew you had travel. They just get the approval notice. It's called consular processing, which we'll talk about next. And all they have to do is walk across the border, show that to US Customs, and they can come in and make their H-1B status effective.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, now here's a question I think we can answer on this slide. I think this is somebody, they're in the US on regular OPT, their STEM extension is pending, and they're hoping for an immediate approval of that. They have a valid F1 visa in their passport. They want to take a trip in early May, and then they want to come back, and then they want their company to file their H-1B for them. I think that could work.
Yeah, I would say one of the big bonuses that we see with this whole registration process now is we have this 90-day filing window. So we can use it as strategy. So I do tell people, go ahead and travel, but we really want you back in the US by the end of May so that we have enough time to file that H-1B petition before the June 30th deadline.
And I see we have some questions about consular processing and visas. So now we're going to be talking about consular processing. So what is consular processing? Who must get it? Who can get it? How does it work?
Yeah, so consular processing is basically a process where you're activating your H-1B status. So you're still filing, you still have that first step where you have to submit a petition to USCIS. And, once the petition's approved, you get a formal approval notice. And for anyone except a Canadian citizen, they travel to, or maybe they're already abroad, they go to a US embassy or consulate and apply to get the H-1B visa sticker or stamp in their passport. Once you get that sticker or stamp, you enter the US and you can make your H-1B effective.
And that's where you can at most enter 10 days before the October 1st start date on your new H-1B visa this year.
Yes, you can enter, but you're not authorized to work. So if you want to look for housing or you want to go see the Statue of Liberty, like that's the window of time to do that. You can also apply for the visa 90 days before October 1. I will say the summer can be a very busy time for US embassies and consulates. So you want to get your visa appointment in as early as possible.
Here's a related question from our audience on H-1B stamping. They're in the US, they're gonna do a change of status. They're fine being here until and beyond October 1st. And they're asking, do I have to go to my home country to get a visa after October?
So if you travel, you're going to need a new visa, an H-1B visa stamp to enter. The preference is always to go to your home country. Otherwise, you're considered a third country national or TCN, and there may be more scrutiny, particularly if it's your first visa stamp, it can be more challenging.
Yeah. And you don't have to travel. You could just decide that you never want to go to another consulate or embassy again, and you're fine waiting in the US until you have a green card and you don't care. And then there's no requirement to leave to get a visa and activate it. Some people might want it as a precaution in case there's some issue with their family and they need to travel unexpectedly, that they already have it taken care of and they know they can come back in. Other people who have to travel immediately just deal with it and try to get it when they're outside. Do you think that the election could have any effect on whether people might want to try to get consular processing done in 2024?
Oh, wow.
Okay, I'll
You're
say
giving
my
me-
2 cents. I know this stresses you out.
Yeah, I'm getting PTSD.
Okay, so prepare for the worst, hope for the best, right? So when the Trump administration started in the past, there were a lot of senior State Department consular officers that decided that now would be a good time to retire. So staffing was down at all the consulates and embassies around the world, even before COVID, when they brought everybody back home. So we were already behind for visa stamping back then. And everything kind of generally slowed down. And he did things like create the Muslim ban and create extreme vetting. So that can make it harder to get a visa in 2025 than in 2024. I think not a lot of people are going to retire again because they already cleared out, 7 years ago. But in a future Biden administration, it's going to be easy. We're going to have fast processing. We're going to continue with interview waivers. We're going to continue with the implementation of the stateside visa stamping program. We didn't really get a lot of visibility on that pilot. We hope they'll roll it out for all H-1Bs by the end of this year. And that would be life-changing for this. If they can get that program implemented before November, then nobody would ever have to travel to get an H-1B visa passport or stamp in their passport again. So that would be ideal, but it might be good just as a backup to plan to get an H-1B visa in your passport at some point in 2024 or get an
Yeah, I
appointment.
think that's reasonable. If you know you have some travel coming up in the next year or two.
Okay, great. All right. So let's talk about how to make sure you maintain your H-1B and you don't lose it and you know what to do next. So what are all the steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important to note is the H-1B is going to be valid generally in 3-year increments, up to 3 years. And then it can be extended beyond that up to 6 years with some exceptions. So you want to track that expiration date very closely. And we are tracking it in our database. So we do monthly reports, we check, we try to notify you around the 7 or 6.5 month mark, notify the company. We've got an H-1B coming up that we need to extend. So that's what's really important, is that you've got to really be mindful of the date. The other thing is that when you travel, I think we keep talking about this over and over again, travel. We talk about the visa stamp, but there's something else to be really mindful of, and that's that I-94 card. So anytime you come into the US, CBP is going to issue an electronic I-94 admission card. And it's really important to download that each time and check it and make sure there's no mistakes, because that's actually determining what your status is and how long you're allowed to stay in the US. So you want to be sure that there's no errors on that. If you have a passport that's expiring, US Customs can limit your stay in the US to align with that passport expiration date. So be really cautious about that. We always advise clients, they do reach out to us when you're here and you have an H-1B, do just sort of reach out to your attorney and your HR people and let them know if you have international travel.
Yeah, and right, so there's H-1Bs issued in 3-year increments, recapture anytime you're outside the US, document everything, make sure you have a visa plan if you're going to travel. If there's changes to the work site, the wage, the job role, we might need to do an amendment. And if you want to advance to getting a green card or setting things up so that your spouse can get a work permit based on your H-1B, those are also things that our team can help you with. And speaking of which, Okay, what else can our team help you with? And then we're gonna go and we're gonna make sure, I think we're gonna have ample time to get all the questions answered. So if you do have more questions, now would be the time to put them in the Q&A panel so that we can make sure to manage our time wisely and get you answers. So here's all the ways we can help you. So first of all, you can join us again in 23 hours and 20 minutes for our next live webinar to ask all your new questions that you've thought about overnight. And you can meet Danielle, who runs Open Avenues, and learn about their program for people who weren't selected. Essentially, you do 2 H-1Bs at the same time, one for 5 hours a week at a nonprofit teaching US college students STEM-based project learning. And then once you're in with that program on your first H-1B without a lottery, then the private employer company can sponsor a second concurrent H-1B for full-time work and no lottery is necessary. So we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about other types of visas, TN, H-1B1, A2, O1. We're going to be talking about O1s for agents. We're going to be talking about self-petitioning EB1As and EB2 NIWs. So it's going to be a really good overview of everything else besides H-1B world. And we're going to get you that email with the registration link. In terms of working with Alcorn for an H-1B or really for any immigration matter, you know, there are things to be mindful of that you'll need to do. You're not just investing your money, but also your time and your energy and your focus and your commitment to just getting things to us by your deadlines. So, you know, you're going to have to set aside time, maybe a couple hours for the employer and a couple hours for the beneficiary. There's, you know, be prepared. There could be a request for evidence. This was way more common in the Trump era when we got them about 30% of the time, but now we're getting them like 2 to 4% of the time. So, you know, probably not going to happen, even if it's an early stage company and you're the first employee and there's no revenue and you're the CEO, we can probably just get your H-1B approved right now.
Yes, right now.
Right now, this year, a limited time offer. There might be additional expenses like getting a translation, or if you had a 3-year bachelor's in India or Australia, maybe we need to get an education evaluation, or if you dropped out of college, maybe we need an experience evaluation. There's going to be government filing fees, premium processing, legal fees, all of those things. But these are our rates, these are our fees, and we would love to help you. And Alex is going to put how to contact us into the chat window. But you know, we help you run this whole process from now to the approval and beyond, and we can help you manage H-1Bs for your entire team, all the green card steps. We do US visas and green cards for people who are entrepreneurs and people working at companies. So we have 2 rates for an H-1B if you were just selected in the lottery and you have not yet worked with us. If this is the first H-1B at your company, it's probably going to be $6,250 for Alcorn's legal services to prepare and file the petition. If it's the second H-1B at your company and you're not an executive or a founder or doing Open Avenues, our flat rate is $4,950, and that includes everything on our side. The company does have to pay this fee. The foreign national is not allowed to pay it, and you're not allowed to dock their wages. For people who need visa stamping for themselves and their families, we offer this service as well. It's typically $2,500, and we walk you through the whole interview preparation process, help you get the paperwork ready, prep you on what questions might be asked. We can help your spouse and children as well. And another thing to be mindful of compared to last year and compared to last week is there are new USCIS filing fees. So if you're going to file an H-1B before June 30th and your company has 25 or less employees, you're probably going to be paying $2,010. If you have 26 or more employees, you're going to be paying $3,380. This all has to be paid for by the company. And then now premium processing went up a couple of weeks ago, so it's no longer $2,500, it's $2,805. So probably it's going to be $2,000 plus $5,000 to $6,000 for Alcorn at a minimum for the budget, depending on how you decide to do this. But we're very happy to help, and we offer companies complimentary consultations, and we're going to be sharing how to contact us and get that scheduled with Lynda or myself, yeah, Alex just put the link to our contact page. So that'll just ask you for your name and your email basically. And you just put, if you're from a company, you know, here's my company and here's what I need help with. I'm a mind reader. That was the next slide. So yes, we're happy. Lynda and I are happy to meet with people from companies to talk about how we can help your employees. And if you are a candidate and you want a second opinion, we're probably going to offer you a paid consultation, unless you're going to, you know, be transferring your H-1B to a new startup that you're founding, something like that. And okay, just real quick, like why work with Alcorn? I think some of the stuff that sets us apart that I hear matters to people in the world, and it's just, you know, the way we believe that this should be done. But try to respond to all client inquiries within 1 business day. We have clear flat fee pricing, even for RFEs. We want you to get approved, and we're not charging by the legal argument or by the hour. We're not trying to do a bad job up front to ensure we can make more money off the RFE. We want happy clients who refer their friends and whose businesses succeed and who do business with us for a long time. So we just want you approved right from the beginning, even if you are at some brand new company or it's some unusual employment situation. We're very creative and we love helping navigate people through those situations legally. Other things that set us apart is our client services agreement for companies has service level agreement, SLAs, with timing. So it's very clear to you, if you pay X, you have, you know, Y amount of time to give us all your documents, and we have Z amount of time to prepare and file the petition with USCIS. And then if you want us to go faster, here's how much it costs, and here's the expected timeline. So we try to make all of that very clear and transparent. And we work with companies to have regular meetings to talk about all of their employees and various statuses and making sure people are moving efficiently through the system. What else sets us apart, Lynda?
I mean, I think that our communication style is very important, and that we are very transparent. And, you know, if we need to jump on a call, we jump on a call. And we do like to have that FaceTime with clients at the beginning of the case to talk through strategies, answer questions, so that we can keep the process moving fast. I mean, that's everyone's goal, but we always want to do it right. We're not trying to cut corners. We do ask for a lot of documents. It sometimes can feel overwhelming, but, you know, there is a method to our madness, and that's the approval, and that's everyone's goal.
Yeah, our highest priority is getting approvals for our clients, and our second highest priority is being nice and kind and cooperative and communicative and helpful and caring along the way, because we know it's a stressful process. Mm-hmm. And people love us. Like, we're on all sorts of employee internal referral lists at Apple and Google and Y Combinator. And so, you know, we're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive, but we try to be very clear about what we do. Okay, that's our pitch. With that, let's get to all these lovely questions. So some of these we may have already answered, but we'll just go through them, and we've got about a little over 10 minutes, so that's great. So we'll try to get to them all. 15 questions, 10 minutes. Here we go. Are there higher chances of not getting the H-1B by doing consular processing over a change of status? Is it riskier to do consular? I think this year, no.
No, it's not riskier. I mean, in terms of the adjudication by USCIS, it's not riskier, but actually, yeah. So the visa stamp, it just adds another step to the process. That's the consideration.
Yeah. Are there any downsides to doing consular processing, as it seems to give you more flexibility to travel?
Yeah, I mean, one of the downsides is if you're from a country where there may be some more scrutiny. If you're from like the Middle East, you know, you might get what's called administrative processing when your visa stamp's processed, and that can slow the whole process down. You could be stuck outside the US. But if you have a pretty clean immigration history and you're from a country with a pretty friendly relationship with the US, it can generally be pretty smooth.
Great, thank you. Next question. It's a California headquarters. The engineer is going to work in their Colorado location, but they want to move the engineer to Texas to build up a team there, and they don't have a location selected in Texas yet. And once the person moves to Texas, the home address will be the new Texas location. Could we make the home address be the updated work location? And what is the proper procedure to do this?
Yeah, so this really connects to this whole labor condition application phase of the H-1B, where you have to identify the location of H-1B employment or locations. So some of the creative things that we've done with clients when we know there's an imminent worksite change is we try to be proactive. So we'll try to list multiple work sites, but if this person hasn't identified a home worksite location yet, maybe there's a friend or family member that they could work out of initially when they move to that area, as long as it's within the commuting area, then we're kind of preserving that worksite location and we can identify both at the time of filing so that you don't have to file an H-1B amendment later on.
We just do a new labor condition application later.
Well, actually, because it's in the same commuting area, all you've got to do is stick a posting up at the new worksite. So if you move 2 doors down, you just put that posting up on the wall and you're all
So I guess
set.
for these folks, if the engineer doesn't have the Texas address now, at least identifying like the metropolitan statistical area and maybe finding a co-working address or a friend's address, so we can at least include it now in addition to the Colorado location, so that in October that can all take effect and be updated. That would be ideal.
Exactly.
Cool, great, okay. Once the company files the petition, are there international travel restrictions I should be aware of? I think we covered this in great depth. I think it really depends on what your existing immigration status is and whether you have a visa. If I have STEM OPT and more than 1 year of it left, do you think premium processing is not needed?
Probably not, but you just have to think about travel. You can
Yeah.
upgrade too.
You can what?
You could upgrade. So if you file it and you don't
Yeah.
get it approved in a month or two, then you could upgrade it and adjust it to premium if you feel like it's, pending too long.
Here's the other situation I'm gonna mention, and it's not legal, but it relates to the business's bottom line, and it relates to people's mental health. If you are a highly anxious person who can't deal with uncertainty, and having this pending is eating away at you and causing you, undue stress in your life that you don't want to deal with, it might be that you should just get premium processing to tear off the band-aid and get it over with, so that you have peace of mind and you can go build and be creative and do your stuff. So that's the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, I personally love premium processing because if the government makes a mistake, we can actually call and talk to a human and
That's
say,
true.
there's a mistake on this approval, or hey, this approval got lost in the mail. Can you send us a new one? And they're like, yeah, no problem. But if you try to deal with the regular processing, it's a whole different service level. It's so impossible to speak with someone. So you do get a lot of services with premium processing too.
Great. All right. Can selected candidates be free to travel after October 1st if the H-1B petition is approved? And is there a deadline to get the H-1B stamp? You're free to travel after October 1st, and you can always leave the US, but whether you can come back in depends on if you have a visa. And yeah, you can go back to your home country and get a visa stamp. Okay, this is interesting. I applied for the lottery in my old passport, which was expiring. I now have a new passport with which I will be filing the actual application. Does this create any complications? They're pretty clear that they didn't want people gaming the system by using 2 separate passports to do 2 separate entries, but I think this is a pretty common scenario, and you should be okay because people's old passports expire all the time, as long as you just did 1 H-1B lottery entry.
Yeah, and I think we just have to do a good job of identifying that in the application. So when I've done that in years past, I've always made a note, I put an addendum on the I-129 form, just to kind of spoon feed it to USCIS so that they don't think it's a different person, because your H-1B selection notice has your passport number on it.
You think we're attorneys, but we have a lot in common with preschool teachers. And actually, my kid's Google preschool teacher just connected with me on LinkedIn, and she's now a recruiter at a law firm. And she's like, any tips? And I'm like, yeah, all the skills you learned to manage preschoolers is really gonna help. Okay, here's a weird one. Somebody is pending asylum. How can they transition to an H-1B? Yeah, don't go back home. We might be able to get you a change of status. This is a super weird outlier case. It is possible, for example, if you were in a valid F1 status and you file your asylum and then your F1 ended and your asylum's pending, like we've seen adjustments of status to green cards work in that situation. So we could try a change of status for you. You definitely need a lawyer. There's a lot of weird legal arguments and research we would have to include in that for you. Okay, a few more minutes. Is premium processing charged per application or per individual? I have a spouse and 2 kids. How much do I pay in total? It's per petition. So if you have a family of 4, we're just paying premium processing once for the worker, and family gets to tag along. When we get the initial stamping, do you recommend we go to our home country? Or how about for the H-1B extension? Do we have to go back to our home country? It's a case-by-case basis. If you can easily go back to your home country and it's safe and they have good processing times, just go there. If you're from Australia or Nigeria and travel's hard or the embassy is difficult, then maybe we need to look at other plans. But we help our clients solve this individually. Home for the holidays. If you're going home in December, wouldn't consular always be a better option? Isn't it then basically the same as a change of status, but without the travel restriction after filing?
Yes.
No,
I mean, it's sort of like a nuance thing, right? Like, you know, it really is going to depend on your individual situation, because we have to evaluate the visa stamp question based on you as a person, look at your profile and make a recommendation.
Yeah, and if you file for a change of status, you do not get a physical stamp in your passport. You have to literally give your passport to the State Department at an embassy or consulate or through FedEx or whatever, but they put visas in your passport. What do you need to submit for education? Diploma, yes. Transcript, yes. What if the bachelor's is from outside of the US? Only the translation? You also need the translation in addition to the diploma and the transcript.
And an evaluation too, right? So if it's a foreign degree and we're using it,
yeah. What are the chances of getting the visa stamped? Okay, if you've done F1 OPT to H-1B via change of status and you're in the US, I don't understand this person's question. And they're saying their visa will expire in 2 weeks. As long as you're maintaining valid F1 status with a valid I-20, and you do your change of status from F1 to H-1B, and then you go abroad later after October to go get an H-1B stamp, it's probably going to be fine. But we can case by case basis. Are we able to check on all forms before submission to USCIS? We have a part of our process where we send everything to you for your review. So all of our clients get a chance to review their documents before we submit them. Every law firm is different. Somebody on F1 OPT was picked. If the company doesn't file for the H-1B, do they get to keep the current status? No, you lose it. You have to get the approval of the initial H-1B from this company in order to retain the option of H-1B and being considered counted against the cap to transfer it to another company in the future. So if your company knows they're going to be laying you off, you can like beg them to get this through for you and pay for it. Then later that would be life-changing for you. So maybe you can negotiate that as part of your severance package. The H-1B selection is not transferable to another employer. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. You can transfer an H-1B after it's approved, and typically we include the 3 most recent pay stubs. If embassies in my home country are closed, can I go to any country to get an H-1B visa stamp? No, it depends on what your country of citizenship is, where you live, and which countries might accept you. What is the cost of an amendment? We charge $4,950 and there's different filing fees. My lease is going to end in June. I don't know my future address. What address should I put as my personal address? I work from home. I don't know. We're going to brainstorm this with you. Depends on what your employer wants to do. Let's see. Okay, we got 1 more minute. Oh my gosh, we've answered several of these. Some of our clients use virtual office spaces. Yes, Regis, Industrious, WeWork, all of those brands. And then somebody's wanting and asking multiple times, if I want to get my H-1B visa stamp in my passport, will you advise I go to the embassy in 2024 after October 1st? Potentially, if you're maintaining valid status in the US now and you don't need to travel internationally sooner, but we'll figure that out on a case-by-case basis. Okay, that is it. We are here to help. Click on the link in the chat window to book a consultation with us. We would love to help you. We have availability on our calendar, Lynda's calendar, for this week and next week to talk to you about getting your H-1Bs filed. And you can also get our book on Amazon. And thank you everybody so much for attending today's webinar. And hopefully we'll also see some of you in 23 hours. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Lynda. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.